Not even in Las Vegas, with all its distractions, can I seem to escape embarrassing Sacramento Kings losses. Not only did the Kings lose to the NBA worst Detroit Pistons tonight, the Kings lost to a short-handed version of the NBA worst Detroit Pistons, giving up 133 points at home. An absolutely pathetic performance for the Kings after a very, very successful road trip. And of course, this all has to happen on the eve of the trade deadline. I'll share with you 3 things that I don't want to hear after tonight's game right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your best bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. Still here in Las Vegas covering the Super Bowl, the 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs, and at least I'm here to watch a good football team play it. Hey, maybe this entire Kings loss in Sacramento was karma for the Kings media team playing the video of Brandon Ayuk's ridiculous catch that sparked the comeback victory over the Detroit Lions. Of course, the Detroit Pistons, Detroit Lions fan base probably roots for both of those teams. So a nice troll job by the Sacramento Kings in arena entertainment team. One of the best, if not the best in the league. Absolute great move by them. But maybe karma bit them in the butt, and that's why the Sacramento Kings lost this game. If we want to blame it on them, sure, let's blame it on them. I think it's fair to blame it on the actual Sacramento Kings themselves for coming home after a extremely successful 5-2 7-game road trip where they looked like they were back to themselves. The swagger was back. The good vibes were back. And then they come home and lay an absolute egg, losing 133-120 to the Detroit freaking Pistons, who were without Cade Cunningham amongst a long list of players, including Bojan Bogdanovic, who did not play as well. Now, the Kings did beat the Pistons in Detroit earlier this season, but that was after an absolutely embarrassing first quarter where the Pistons didn't look like they were going to miss. Finally, they cooled down for the rest of the game. The Kings found a way to come back and win that game. Tonight, the Pistons didn't stop making threes, right? And this is a consistent trend. Literally the last podcast after the Kings road loss to end that trip in Cleveland when the Cavaliers shot in the mid-50s or something like that percentage-wise from three-point range. We talked about what is going wrong for the Kings. Why are so many teams shooting this well against Sacramento? We'll talk about that again later on in the podcast and this issue that this Kings team clearly has that they need to address. But before we get into all that, I want to share with you 3 things from this game that I don't want to hear. The first thing that I don't want to hear or see is the excuse of the Kings not performing well because this is their first home game back after a long road trip. I don't need to hear any of that crap. I don't need to hear any of the crap about, the Kings, it's hard to play well in the final game of a long road trip. It's hard to play well on your first game back from a long road trip. It's hard to play well, and keep changing the circumstance all you want. It doesn't change the fact that it's a total, complete BS, nonsensical excuse that I hope to God nobody in that locker room and nobody on that coaching staff is making. That could be nonsensical fan chatter or podcast host chatter to bring up. It's really hard to win on the first game back after a long road trip. It's hard to get reacclimated, come back and have to handle all your personal life things and get reacclimated with your home and get back on track and then play a basketball game a day later. No, nonsense. Who cares? Garbage. It's all empty words. It's all irrelevant to how the Sacramento Kings played and performed tonight. So I sure as hell don't want to hear that. I also don't want to hear, hey, tip your cap to the Pistons or give the Detroit Pistons credit. Now, that's not to say that the Pistons, especially Jaden Ivey, and we'll talk about him here in just a second, Not to say like, hey, they had fantastic games. They made a boatload of shots. They played really, really well. They battled hard despite being shorthanded. Like, I'm not saying don't give the Pistons any kind of credit. And if you want a boatload of credit for the Pistons, go check out Kuka Hill on the Locked On Pistons podcast. I'm sure he's having a great night tonight. You want that? Go to Locked On Pistons. You're not getting it here because this is not tip your cap to the Pistons. The Kings just got beat tonight. Oh, darn it. The Pistons shot well. Nah. This is a consistent problem for the Sacramento Kings. Not just allowing teams to shoot so well from the perimeter, not just pathetic defensive efforts and falling apart defensively and allowing way too many points. It's teams that are shorthanded or teams that you know that you're better than. And it's not debatable that the Kings are better than the Detroit Pistons. They absolutely are. Your roster is way better, whether the Pistons are at full strength or shorthanded like they were tonight. There's no conversation. The Kings are the better basketball team. So screw tipping your cap. Screw giving them credit. How about the Sacramento Kings take ownership for the consistent failures of this Kings team? They take ownership for the fact that they come home after successful road trips. They finally start to get back on track. They take 2 steps forward, followed by 1 gigantic step back, and they've done it 4 or 5 times already over the course of this season. The Kings need to look at themselves in the mirror and stop tipping caps and instead analyze what they're doing wrong. Throw the cap away. Pay attention to your shortcomings, your mental mistakes, your physical mistakes, your ineptitudes. Because ultimately, even though this is a meaningless Wednesday night game, although it's actually not that meaningless considering the Kings standing situation, which we will get into in just a little bit. But it's in the grand scheme of the regular season, like it's a Wednesday night, whatever game against the Detroit Pistons. A game you're absolutely expected to win. And one of those games where if the Kings miss out on a playoff spot or home court advantage or something by the end of the season by a game or two, we're going back and we're pointing to this performance and going, what the hell happened against the Pistons at home? It matters in that sense. But like in the grand scheme of things, a loss to the Pistons, a one-time loss to the Pistons, it's not as massive of a deal compared to how the Kings perform in the playoffs, how the Kings perform when the lights are brightest. Can they correct the mistakes that they had at the end of last season and in the postseason last season? But the reality is they're trying to build better habits for themselves right now. They're trying to address those mistakes and fix them now, not just fix them against an established playoff team in a best-of-7 series come April or May. At that point, it's too little too late, right? So I look at performances like this. I look at consistent struggles and failures by this Kings team, and I go, these are the things you have to correct, even if it's against teams that you have no concern of meeting or facing in the playoffs. It's not about the Pistons tonight. It's about you. It's about what you keep doing wrong, why you keep stumbling when you should be succeeding. When success is absolutely the expectation, but success is given in a matchup like this. Home against the Pistons, shorthanded after a successful road trip. Kings are fully available for the most part. They're a healthy basketball team. Win this freaking basketball game. No excuses, no tip of the cap. Finally, the last thing that I definitely don't want to hear, and I saw some people talking about it, some people saying it. I don't need to hear any of this. The Kings should have drafted Jaden Ivey nonsense. Jaden Ivey had a fantastic game. I give him all the credit in the world. 37 points, career high for him, 5 of 7 from three-point range, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. He scored 19 points in the fourth quarter. On one hand, I think the Sacramento Kings did a piss-poor job of trying to get the ball out of his hands or even defend him in the fourth quarter. They continued to allow him to just cook them in isolation, or they would leave him on the perimeter collapsing way too hard in the paint. When you were getting torched from three-point range all night by the Pistons, you continue to collapse. Your rotations are slow. You're leaving hot shooters wide open, and they end you before you even have a chance to come back late in the third or fourth quarter because they're knocking down all those threes. Like defensive breakdown after defensive breakdown. Not to take anything away from what Jaden Ivey did. Jaden had a fantastic night tonight. Best game of his career by far, and he's balling right now that he's getting more opportunity in that Detroit Pistons starting lineup. Good for freaking him. But I don't need to hear anything about the Kings should have taken him over Keegan Murray, and there's no need to emerge, or the resurgence of those ridiculous takes on and before draft night after all of the great things that Keegan Murray has done. One freaking game from Jaden Ivey, a meaningless game, the 7th win of the Pistons freaking season, does not change or is not more valuable than all of the amazing things that Keegan Murray has done for Sacramento. Now, granted, Keegan had a bad night tonight. He scored 0 points. I don't know if he's ever done that in his career other than games that he obviously did not play. 0 points tonight, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, 0 points in 20 minutes, right? He was terrible. He was not good. His last 6 games, 5 points, 33 points, 5 points, 5 points, 10 points, 0 points. Keegan's going through a funk, and I'm a little bit concerned that Keegan's funk is also happening and has started while Harrison Barnes has kind of ascended again. Right? We talk a lot about there's only so many shots to go around. There's only one ball. Does somebody have to sacrifice for somebody else? We love the version of Harrison Barnes that we've been getting as of late. Granted, Harrison only had 8 points tonight. But when Harrison had 32, Keegan had 13. When Harrison had 39, Keegan had 14. When Harrison had 20, Keegan had 15. That's not too bad. When Harrison had 22, Keegan had 5. When Harrison had 22, Keegan had 10. That's all in the last handful of games. Right, and we're going to talk about, towards the end of this podcast, why the Sacramento Kings can't seem to get consistent production out of this team, or the majority of this team, on the nightly basis. One guy on this team is showing up every single night. Everybody else is hit or miss, and that is a problem for this Kings team too. Again, we'll address that later on. But wake me up when Jaden Ivey scores 47 points in a game like Keegan did earlier this season. Wake me up when Jaden Ivey sets 3-point records in the NBA as a rookie, or 3 points in a season. Wake me up when Jaden Ivey contributes to more than a win here or there for the Detroit Pistons. Now, I don't blame Jaden Ivey at all for the state of the Pistons. That is a sorry franchise and a sorry team, and maybe Jaden can be part of the core to bring them out of it one day. I have no idea. I certainly don't blame Jaden Ivey for the Pistons being a 7-win team. But you take Keegan Murray and put him in Detroit, and you put Jaden Ivey on this Sacramento Kings roster, and you expect this team to be as efficient and to be as effective as they have been over these last 2 seasons, with Keegan being expected to be a solid starting contributor to a playoff team right away. I promise you, Jaden is not doing and is not performing at the rate that Keegan Murray has been performing and doing, especially defensively, on this Kings team. It's not even close. So I don't take all those ridiculous thoughts that should be brushed far under the rug or thrown completely in the trash can. Don't let those demons reemerge. Get rid of them. Don't need to hear that tonight. But of course, like I said, this performance happens on the eve of the NBA trade deadline. Now, one thing I know for sure, Monte McNair and the Kings front office, they're not going to overreact to this loss. You and I might be going, oh my God, 12 hours before the trade deadline, look at all the obvious holes this Kings team has. A loss at home to the Pistons right before the trade deadline. The Kings need to make a move. Monte, open your eyes, right? We might feel that way, and I'm certainly seeing a lot of that on Kings social media right now. But Monte is not one to make a knee-jerk reaction. Now, that's not me saying that Monte shouldn't be exploring moves and looking to improve this team. Of course he's doing that. But it takes 2 to tango, right? And ultimately what we've been talking about here on Locked On Kings for the past couple of months is it's hard for the Kings to go out and get upgrades to this roster for the players that they're willing and not willing to give up, right? It's harder to get a better piece when you're trading the up and down, inconsistent Harrison Barnes. Even if he's playing better right now, he's been inconsistent this season. Same thing with Kevin Huerter. Davion Mitchell has been in and out of the lineup. I thought Davion actually played pretty well tonight, but Davion Mitchell has been in and out of the Sacramento Kings lineup. You're not going to get upgrades for these players more often than not unless you're attaching significant draft compensation to those players, and that significant draft compensation is too much to give for the players that are realistically that the Kings are targeting, right? The Kyle Kuzmas or the Jeremy Grants, names like that they've been attached to. Monte is not going to overreact to this loss, even if we want him to. But this loss should be in the back of his head as we approach 12 noon tomorrow. We're less than 24 hours away from the trade deadline. If Monte wants to make a move and figure it out, he's got to figure it out quickly. But I still think there's a very, very, very high likelihood that the Kings are either making very marginal moves, maybe slightly better than the Kessler Edwards move of last season, or they're sticking with what they got, believing in this team, or just choosing to ride this out for the rest of the season and into another playoff series and get that context and then go into next offseason and make some decisions. And I know Kings fans don't want to hear that because it always feels like the Kings are pushing it back and delaying the inevitable. And I understand that way of thought. I just want you to know that and understand Monty is not going to overreact to this performance. Monty is not going to make a knee-jerk trade. I don't think a performance like this is what tips the scales. If Monty was on the fence about a Kuzma trade or a Caruso trade, I would love that, or something like that. I don't think this is the performance that he goes, yep, fine, here's what you want. Give me my guy, I need him. I don't think so. I could be wrong, but based off of what I know of Monty, I just don't think that is the case. However, the Kings need to be aware of the reality of their situation. And when you're looking at the standings and looking at the perimeter defensive issues with this Kings team, Monty can't ignore the blatant situation that Sacramento is in. I'll lay that all out for you here in just a second. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to all of you who celebrate and participate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If Super Bowl for you is all about finding that perfect spot on the couch, that most comfortable position with the best angle of the TV where nobody's in your way, snacking on all those delicious foods and things that you enjoy on Super Bowl, maybe some delicious ribs or whatever hot off the grill, add FanDuel to that list of things you love and those traditions each year on Super Bowl, because FanDuel gives you the most exciting, different, enjoyable ways to play on Super Bowl Sunday. Whether you're betting on which player will score the first touchdown or which player will score a touchdown period. Of course, there's the classic money lines and point spreads and things like that, but you can go deeper than that. The prop bets, who's going to win the coin toss, how long will the national anthem be, Usher's song list at the halftime performance. FanDuel has so many different, unique, and creative ways for you to play, have fun, and ultimately make money. And here's the thing, FanDuel wants to help you make money right away because they're offering new customers who sign up $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. So you have time between now and Sunday. Take those $5 and bet on anything, whether it's the Kings-Nuggets game on Friday or some kind of prop bet, some kind of parlay, whatever it is. Put $5 down. That's all you have to do. When that bet wins, you already get the money that you won from that bet. And here's $200 in bonus bets on top of all of that to give you more money to play with and essentially a pretty significant free roll for Super Bowl Sunday so you can have some fun and ultimately make some cash on FanDuel's dime. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The Detroit Pistons shot 54% from three-point range tonight, 17 of 31. The Pistons are 23rd in the NBA in three-point shooting percentage, averaging 35.7 a game. Once again, that's almost a 20% increase on their average to what they actually shot against the Sacramento Kings for the second straight game. The Cleveland Cavaliers did that just 2 games ago, or 2 nights ago, I should say. The Kings have now allowed 50% or better shooting from three-point range 7 different times this season. That is tied with the Spurs and the Nets for the most in the league. A really, really bad team and a team that's trending more down than they are up. That is not the company that you want to be in. It's not bad luck. It's not bad luck that teams just seem to shoot so well against Sacramento, or those teams just keep having those big career shooting nights or team high shooting nights against Sacramento. It's not just bad luck that it keeps happening to the Kings. It's a problem. It is your problem. It is not what the Pistons are doing. It's not what the Cavaliers are doing or any other of the teams in these 7 occasions that have shot 50% or better from three-point range. It is not them. It is you. I don't know how to fix it. I don't. We talked about in the last podcast, went into great detail about two theories of whether it's teams just coming in with a boatload of confidence shooting the basketball because they know the Kings have a reputation for giving up a lot of perimeter looks, or Sacramento not having the athleticism and length and size to be able to close out on shooters with the way they want to play defense and how they collapse on the interior and try and help on the interior and leave shooters open. They don't have the length to close out and put a hand in somebody's face. I don't know what the problem is, but I know the Kings have to address it. What's crazy is going back to the playoffs, the Kings did a really good job of holding the Golden State Warriors to low shooting percentages from three-point range. Now, unfortunately, the Kings themselves also didn't shoot too well from three-point range. It was great to see them do that during the playoffs last season. But that's a 7-game sample size versus 7 games here of allowing 50% or better from three-point range, plus a boatload of more games where teams are shooting in the 40s. Or high 30s. The Kings, for God's sakes, are second to last in the NBA, or at least they were coming into tonight's game, allowing teams to shoot over 39% from three-point range a night. Right? This is a problem. This is a big problem. Now, it goes beyond that. This is a character trait of this Kings team at this point, that they allow not just a lot of threes, they allow teams to shoot lights out from the perimeter, regardless if they're at their best or if they're playing the end of their bench like the Pistons did tonight. It's your problem, not bad luck. And if Monty truly does not have the length to play the closeout perimeter defense that the Kings need to play, if they're truly just not long enough to be able to contest shots the way that an average NBA team should be able to, yes, you have to make a move at this trade deadline. You have to make probably multiple moves at this trade deadline. And don't just get guys that are marginal players that are a little bit bigger. And I say that with respect to guys like Kessler Edwards. He's a marginal player. Like when he plays, he does good things on the defensive end, but he's a net zero or negative on the offensive end of the floor. Don't just get guys that are lengthy and athletic enough, but who aren't going to play because they're not good enough to play. Go out and get lengthy, athletic, defensive-minded players that are actually going to be a part of a NBA rotation or a playoff team's rotation. That's what you need, not another 2 or 3 Kessler Edwards developmental projects that Mike Brown might go to for 2 or 3 games and then we won't see for 2.5 weeks. Here's the reality of the Kings situation right now. The Kings are on a very slippery slope. At 29-21, 8 games over 500, it's not like the Kings are a bad team. Record-wise, they're not in a bad spot, but here's the reality. The West is crazy this year. It's absolutely nuts. With this loss, the Kings fell from 5th place to 7th place. And here are their next 9 games. You ready for these? Their next 9 games. Nuggets, defending champs. Oklahoma City Thunder, yes, you've beat them twice, but they're one of the best teams in the West. Phoenix Suns, who just came back and beat the crap out of you in the 4th quarter and are playing good basketball right now. The Nuggets, again, defending champs. The San Antonio Spurs, you should beat them, but based off of losses to the Pistons, who knows if the Kings are going to beat a team like the San Antonio Spurs. The LA Clippers, who have absolutely owned the Sacramento Kings this season. The Miami Heat, who just beat the Kings a couple nights ago. The Denver Nuggets, again, defending champs. And the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are 1-1 against the Kings so far this season, but also have the players to present matchup nightmares against Sacramento. There is a very good chance, y'all, that this Kings team is in the play-in spot, or potentially even worse if things go really, really bad, by March 2nd. We're talking early March. We're talking the home stretch of the season, and the Kings could be firmly in a play-in picture because even though they're 8 games above 500, with the way the West is shaking out, whether the Kings make a move at the trade deadline or not, if they don't get their crap together and figure this thing out, they can fall and tumble down these standings in a hurry. One home loss, one uncharacteristic bad night, and you drop 2 spots. How many uncharacteristic bad nights can you afford to make from here on out? I'll tell you, you already spent your get-out-of-jail-free card and a boatload of other get-out-of-jail-free cards to this point this season. You've reached your quota of bad losses. You've reached it. From this point on, every single bad loss in winnable games like you had tonight is going to potentially have drastic ramifications, drastic impacts on not just what seed you'll be in the playoffs, but if you'll even be in the playoff picture or if you'll have to play an extra game or 2 in the play-in just to get there. That's the reality of the Kings situation right now. They're on a slippery slope. Monte McNair needs to find out if this roster is truly good enough. And I believe they are. I think this team can get hot at the right time. I thought they were doing that on this road trip until they came home. Maybe this is another wake-up call, although they've had 3 or 4 wake-up calls so far this season. So maybe, or why would I believe this one would be different? Monte really, truly needs to spend the next 12 or so hours and really look at this team and go, are they worth betting on? And it's not that you don't want to hurt feelings. It's not that you don't want to piss people off. It's that you need results. Is this team worth it? Again, I want to believe, and this is more the optimistic side of me coming out, I want to believe they are and they can because we've seen them get hot at the right time. But I am so bothered by the ups and downs, by the 2 steps forward, 1 gigantic step back, by these weird, unexplainable, unacceptable losses and defensive performances that have piled up all season long, even for a team that is 8 games over 500. I think it speaks volumes. And Monte really needs to listen to what's being said before this trade deadline, before noon tomorrow. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to just get some things off of our chest, whether it's big or small. Certain things can really start to get at you and eat away at you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to tell you how much BetterHelp is good for you, how available it is to you, how it's therapy that goes beyond the taboo, right? That goes beyond the things that you see on television or you see in movies, beyond the things that maybe scare you about it or think, that's too serious. I don't need to do anything like that. My problems aren't that big, right? Therapy is not about getting intense psychiatric help. Therapy is about talking to a licensed professional, someone who will listen to you with an unbiased opinion, of course, but someone who can also help you approach and tackle and walk alongside you through the different struggles of life, the highs, the lows, the big problems, and the small. That's what BetterHelp, that's what therapy can do for you. And I'm speaking from experience because therapy has helped me in so many ways over the last handful of years, really since COVID, that I've started to see my therapist. Therapy can be different for everybody, but what you should be always prioritizing is your mental health and your mental well-being. So go and give BetterHelp a try. If you're thinking about checking it out, BetterHelp is awesome because they fit therapy to your schedule. We're all busy. It's completely online. You can change and switch therapists for no charge. If the first therapist you're assigned to or get connected to just doesn't work for you, you can change it, and BetterHelp's not going to penalize you or anything for that. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. Go to BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Another thing the Sacramento Kings and maybe Monte McNair to some extent need to figure out. This Kings team has a really, really difficult time having performances where the majority of this roster or everybody's on the same page. It happens every once in a while, and when it happens, the Kings look awesome and unbeatable, right? Not too long ago, they had a win where they had 4 players score 20-plus points. Like, awesome. This team is on at the same time. It's great. But like I laid out earlier, in games where Barnes is playing well, Keegan is struggling a little bit, or nights where Kevin Huerter is playing well, maybe Malik Monk is struggling a little bit, right? It seems like, whether it's the eye test or the numbers, it backs up. Domantas Sabonis is the only player this season that I just see consistently, night in and night out, playing as hard as he possibly can and giving the Sacramento Kings the same level of production. Now, sometimes the scoring is bigger on some nights than it is on other nights, right? Sometimes Domas will have a triple-double with 12 points. The next night he'll have a triple-double with almost 30, right? Tonight he had 30 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists, his 33rd consecutive double-double for the Kings, right? But whether the scoring numbers are up or down, you're consistently getting double-doubles and triple-doubles and effort and impact, just impactful play from Sabonis on a nightly basis. And I don't know if I can say the same about anybody else on this Kings roster. It's okay to have cold spells. It's okay to have struggles. It's okay to have good nights and bad nights. And that's the point of having a team, is other players are available to pick you up when you're down and pick you up when you're struggling, right? But, for example, De'Aaron Fox, this is his last handful of games. 12 points, then 29 points, then 34 points, then 23 points, then 13 points, then 25 points, then 41 points, then 19 points, and then tonight, 12 points. Up and down and up and down and up and down. And while I understand that you're not going to get the 34 points and the 41 points every single night from De'Aaron, I would rather you sacrifice those two a little bit so that that 12-point game and 13-point game and 12-point game and 19-point game are gone, and you're looking at 26, 27 points a night for De'Aaron, which matches his average. I'd rather you could just pencil De'Aaron in for 25 to 29 a night every single night than have the 40, which the Kings love, followed by the 13 or 12 tonight, which the Kings desperately, in a night where the Kings desperately need more from De'Aaron. It's not just him. Malik Monk, 13 points, 9 points, 13 points, 4 points, 9 points, 3 points, 6 points, 23, 22, 18, 23. Now that illustrates kind of the cold spell that he was on, followed by the recent hot spell that he's on, or he's back to scoring a lot of points. He's worked his way through that funk. Again, stretches of bad basketball are going to happen. But again, it's this. It's up and down. It's up and down. It's a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster. It's a lack of consistency. And when you don't know what version of the vast majority of your roster you're going to get on a nightly basis, it's hard to develop into a fundamentally consistent, solid basketball team that you expect to take you deep into the playoffs. Of course, you need stars. You need those big, epic performances. But you also need reliable players, a reliable roster. And while I do think the Kings have a roster full of players that are capable of being reliable, they have not been as reliable as they should be this season. Even Kevin Huerter to some extent. He's playing really, really well right now. His scoring numbers are back up to around what you want his average to be, that 14, 15, 16-point range. Awesome. But there have been 2 extended stretches this season where he just disappears and falls off the face of the earth. Really, everybody in the starting lineup, with the exception of Domantas Sabonis, you don't know what version you're going to get out of them on a nightly basis. And if that's an issue caused by you have so many weapons, you have too many cooks in the kitchen, you have so many guys that want shots, but you can't get everybody shots, then you need to take 1 or 2 out and replace them with someone that doesn't necessarily demand those shots or need those shots to be as effective because they're doing it on the rebounds or they're doing it on defense. I'm not an NBA general manager. That makes sense to me. I could be completely wrong. But the Kings need to find a way to perform together consistently. Because when they do, oh my God, do they look great. Right? When they have those nights where 4 or 5 or 6 guys are playing well, that doesn't mean everybody's in the 20s or everybody's scoring 15-plus points. It's just everybody's playing well and on the same page. This Kings team is close to unbeatable. But unfortunately, that's more of a flash in the pan than these bad losses have been. Like the Kings have had more bad losses than they've had those great team nights, even with a 29-21 record. That can't happen. I don't know what Monty's going to do before the trade deadline. Again, gut feeling is he's going to continue to stay put. Gut feeling is that this team is going to be basically the exact same when we pass noon tomorrow. I don't think that any big moves are coming. If they do, boy, I hope they're the right move and not just a knee-jerk reaction from Monty. There's no denying that this roster needs improvements, has holes, and could get better. But sometimes it just might not be the right time. And I promise you, in the end, in the grand scheme of things, even if it doesn't feel like it right now, the Kings are in a better place for sticking with what they got than making the wrong Kuzma move or the wrong Jeremy Grant move that doesn't only impact the future of this Kings roster, but also commits this team financially and cap-wise to a group that might not be the right group to ultimately accomplish the goal, which is winning a championship. I know you got to try some things. I know you got to take some risks. There's really no such thing as a safe trade or a safe move at this point. But Monty, again, is not just going to make a move for the sake of making a move. So we'll see what he does at the trade deadline. I'll be watching it with you. Of course, I plan on having a Locked On Kings podcast tomorrow with a breakdown of trade deadline day, and it's probably going to end up being another quiet one. I'm just warning you, but hey, maybe I'm wrong. We'll wait and see. Whatever happens, we'll talk about it here on Locked On Kings. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of the podcast. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.